Have you ever wondered why it feels so difficult to be your true self in a world that constantly demands perfection? We're all too familiar with those societal pressures, the expectations to conform, to fit into a certain mold. Let me share a personal story with you. There was a time when I was continually under the spotlight, scrutinized for every action. I felt the need to mask my mistakes, to hide my weaknesses, all in the pursuit of acceptance and validation. It was exhausting trying to maintain this facade of perfection. I was so engrossed in living up to the expectations that I lost sight of myself, my truth. It felt like I was wearing a mask, hiding my true self from the world. I was afraid to show my vulnerabilities, to reveal my imperfections. But what if I told you that your vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength? Imagine a life where you no longer feel the need to hide your true self, where authenticity is your guide. A life where you're unafraid of showing the world who you really are, quirks, flaws, and all. It's a liberating thought, isn't it? Let me share a story with you. A story that's deeply personal and transformative. It was a typical Tuesday. I was in a meeting packed with people, each one trying to outshine the other, each one wearing a mask of perfection. I too was part of this charade. But something shifted that day. I felt a strong urge to break away from the pretense, to strip away the layers of inauthenticity. I took a deep breath, and for the first time I let my guard down. I shared my struggles, my fears, my dreams that I'd kept hidden. It was terrifying, yes, exposing myself to the possibility of judgment, rejection, or ridicule, but it was also liberating. I was no longer shackled by the fear of what others might think. I was free to just be me. The room fell silent for a moment that felt like an eternity. But then something magical happened. My vulnerability was met with respect, understanding, and a sense of camaraderie. I wasn't alone in my fears or my dreams. I'd created a space for others to be authentic too. This decision, this courage to be myself, transformed not just my relationships with others, but my relationship with myself. I began to see myself in a new light. I wasn't just a collection of flaws or a projection of perfection. I was a human being full of complexities and contradictions, just like everyone else. The liberation and empowerment that came with this decision were profound. I was no longer bound by the constraints of societal expectations or the fear of judgment. I was free to be me, to embrace my vulnerability and to live my truth. It's a scary step, but the rewards of authenticity far outweigh the temporary comfort of conformity. Because in the end, it's our authenticity that makes us truly beautiful, truly unique, and truly human. So how do we take that step? How do we find the courage to be vulnerable and authentic in a world that often seems to reward the opposite? It begins with self-reflection, peering into the mirror of our souls and acknowledging who we truly are, flaws and all. It requires the courage to accept ourselves, even when we're tempted to hide what we perceive as weaknesses. It's about recognizing that our imperfections are not blemishes, but rather unique brushstrokes in the masterpiece that is us. Let's take a moment to delve into a personal anecdote. Once upon a time, I found myself at a crossroads, paralyzed by fear and discomfort. It was only when I chose to face these fears, to embrace my vulnerability, that I began to see genuine growth. I became more confident, more content, and most importantly, more authentic. The journey to authenticity begins with a single brave decision: to embrace your vulnerability. Now I ask you this, are you ready to embrace your vulnerability and live authentically? Take a moment to reflect on your life. Think about the instances where you've shied away from being your true self. Maybe you've shrouded your passions, quieted your voice, or hid your genuine emotions. We all have moments of vulnerability that we often view as weaknesses. But consider this, what if these vulnerabilities are not our weaknesses but our strengths? It's time to challenge the status quo. It's time to bravely step into the light of authenticity. Embrace your vulnerabilities, no matter how uncomfortable it may seem. This is your starting point towards a journey of authentic living. Understand that it's okay to feel vulnerable, to be imperfect. Because it's these very imperfections that make us human, that make us unique. It's these very imperfections that shape our authentic selves. Remember, your vulnerability is your strength. Embrace it and watch as your life transforms in ways you never imagined possible. Thanks for watching, and please like, share, subscribe, and while you are at it, remember to head on over to mentalhealthlove.com for more great self-care tips and articles.